I'd like to start by asking you a little bit about your most memorable situation you faced over these previous roles. Basically, what's the craziest thing you've ever experienced in your career? We've had lots of weird things, but there's got to be one that kind of sticks out.
Oh, there is definitely one that sticks out, and it was the attempted hijacking that actually happened in Montego Bay. There
Yeah.
was a distraught young man whose girlfriend seemed to go to Miami, and he decided that he was going to come to the airport and get himself to Miami somehow. And he came in fully armed with a gun and pushed himself through security and got himself onto the last boarding aircraft of the day. It was about 9:30 p.m. at night, and that just coincidentally happened to be a CanJet, which at the time you probably remember CanJet was an airline from here, and it was flying to
Yep.
Halifax. This
Mhm.
poor young man, I guess, didn't really understand the geography of where he was going, but it was really very scary and
Oh,
very,
yeah,
very
absolutely.
devastating. There were, more than 180 people on this aircraft. It was a full plane of people who had just had a wonderful vacation in Jamaica, who were being basically held hostage by a young man with a gun, and he shot at the captain. So, up and probably till Hurricane Melissa, you could probably still see the bullet hole on gate number 7, bridge number 7. And this went on for the entire evening. We had some very brave crew members that negotiated with the young man to get these hostages released off the aircraft. They were finally released in the middle of the night. The prime minister came in with his, entourage in Jamaica to help with sort of, emergency management of the reputation of Jamaica. There was obviously international media interest from all over, but here was really the other crazy piece of it is not only was it a Canadian aircraft, which just happened to be coincidence, it happened to be the last aircraft boarding that night. The next day, I was actually scheduled to fly to Kingston to meet with the Prime Minister of Canada, who at the time was Stephen Harper, who was on an official state
Uh,
visit meeting with Prime Minister Golding. And of course, that meant that the Prime Minister was there with the entire Canadian media contingent that had joined him on this official state visit. And it was just coincidence. And of course, the other coincidence is that, 25.5% of the operation and the operational responsibility in Montego Bay was of a Canadian company. So here we had a Canadian company operational responsibility of Montego Bay, and the Prime Minister visiting, and it was a Canadian aircraft that was involved. So it was just a crazy, crazy time.
yeah.
Boy, did I learn a lot in terms of media relations and crisis management. And quite honestly, a lot of us in airport management happily don't have to go through anything like that, but boy, it was quite the long night, and just the aftermath
Timing
of
is
looking at the
everything, right?
impacts. Timing
Yeah.
is everything. And and you have to understand too, when something like that happens, a destination like Jamaica is worried about their reputation, is worried about what the long-term impacts could be. Would this be sending a message to tourists not to come to the island because somehow it's not safe? I mean, it was just so devastating, and that's really what the government in Jamaica was. Us as their operator, we had to be very sensitive to what their concerns were. I mean, they took over all the media messaging, which is very difficult as an airport manager. You want to be controlling what's being said out in the media. So it was a really a crazy time, but I would tell you one of the more significant things that's ever happened in my career in terms of learning opportunities, and one that's exceedingly rare for most of us in management business.
Well, and it's one of those things. Even if there was an airport management school for this kind of thing, that's not something you can teach or forecast. But you learn how to adapt, and I think the most important thing is knowing how to communicate with people, knowing how to coordinate, and keeping calm under pressure. Right? It's something else. In my expat career, I had a number of major incidents as well, and it seems like at least half of them are in Montego Bay for some reason. But between hurricanes and social unrest and one famous day getting a call from the Minister of Transport very upset because we had a report of a 757 from American landing in New York, and they found a body in the nose gear of the 757.
Oh,
And they presumed that it came from Jamaica because the airplane came from Jamaica. And so upset that we, the Canadians, let this happen. He said, well, let us investigate and we'll call you back in the afternoon. Call back in the afternoon. We said, well, we've identified the nationality of the person that was found in the nose gear, and he's actually Dominican. And then he got really upset. How did you let a Dominican get on the airport? And we said, well, hold on a sec. Actually, he got on board, or he got into the nose gear in Dominican Republic. It turns out he flew in and out of New York 4 times in the
oh my
nose
word.
terrible, right?
Oh,
But
terrible.
but the story was that the reason they found it, it was such a that nose gear on the 757 is so deep that the only time you would actually inspect that part of the airplane is during um, um, a periodic maintenance inspection. So on this, sort of 2 week inspection cycle, somebody looked up in the nose gear and made the discovery. But uh, it was somewhat relieving to know that it wasn't as a breach of our security. It was still pretty awful. But
Yeah.
again, you think that, like, I've heard that story before and think, oh, that's just a urban myth. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not an urban myth.